What's up, y'all? Cliche Do Stuff finally back at you with another video. How is everyone doing today? So, this is just a brief summary of the movies I watched in September, even though we're at the end of October. But yeah, so this one is going to be very brief, like compared to like my normal videos, I think, because it's been so long since I've watched these movies. I watched 32 movies in September, and I'm already past that in October. Um, but yeah, so here we go. First movie of September I watched was Bronson, starring Tom Hardy, and I enjoyed the movie. I did when I kind of looked into some reviews. Some people didn't like how it kind of like glorified the prisoner that Tom Hardy played, but just looking at it as a movie, I thought it was enjoyable. I enjoyed Tom Hardy's acting, which I love Tom Hardy. This was probably his best performance. I feel like that's a pretty easy thing for me to claim. But I did enjoy it, and I do think it was a good movie, and I do recommend it. Moving on to The Godfather, which I won't spend a whole lot of time on because there's been countless discussion about The Godfather. I do think it is a great movie. It's a really fun movie for me, just being able to just wrap yourself up into this mafia world, even though they couldn't say mafia in the movie. But yeah, it's just a fun movie. Lots of great acting. The behind the scenes stuff of it is probably even more interesting than the movie itself, as far as like the mafia kind of being involved and whatnot. I'm not gonna get into that here, but The Godfather, is it overhyped? I mean, it's a great movie. I think people get disappointed sometimes watching it because it is hyped up so much, but I don't know if I would call it overhyped because it is a phenomenal movie. Moving on from that to the opposite, just not a good movie in my opinion. I don't like trashy movies, but Last Shift did a thing that I hate, and that is have an insane amount of dream sequences, or like what might as well be dream sequences, where just things happen to characters in horror movies, and then like it's like there's a demon or a monster there, and then they blink and it's gone, or something happened, but then it didn't really happen because they were like daydreaming it or whatever. There's no stakes at that point. Obviously, by the end of the movie, stuff does happen, but just all throughout the movie, you're just let down so much. Is like by the time the end, I'm like, I don't even care. By the time it gets to the end, so yeah, I personally did not have a fun time with Last Shift or Contracted, which is the fourth movie I watched of the month. Um, and again, it's been forever since I've watched these movies, but Contracted, didn't like it. Didn't like the characters. I remember there being a lot of stupid decisions that were made. And there was a part two I was gonna watch, but the first one just annoyed me so much I just gave up. Moving on to one, I love the idea of sirens and like killer mermaids and stuff. So I found one called Mermaid Down, and I mean it's just a little cheesy independent type thing. Wouldn't call it a good movie, but I mean it was fun about a mermaid who she kind of gains legs, kind of not in like a Little Mermaid type of way, but wasn't really a killer mermaid movie though. So I was kind of disappointed in it, but I mean it was whatever. Moving on to The Collector, which is kind of not necessarily Saw or Hostile levels of like gore and whatever, but it's kind of in that vein as far as just like uneasy, kind of hard to watch, I guess, depending on your experience with horror movies, gory movies. But The Collector, I've seen it a couple times. It's an enjoyable one for me. I don't like the sequel. I believe there's a third one, or they were supposed to make a third one. But the first one, The Collector, is fun, and just it's kind of like a little Home Alone, but for adults type of thing, with the way the house is kind of like rigged up and whatnot. Moving on to My Sister's Keeper, which is one of them that I've never even heard of before I saw a TikTok about it. And I started talking to some coworkers, and they were shocked that I never heard of it. Apparently, it was a big deal pre 2010 when it came out. It came out in like 2009, I think. I haven't like refreshed my memory, looked up anything on any of these movies, but starring Cameron Diaz, and Alec Baldwin too, which was funny. But it was a good movie, a good tearjerker movie. There's a book as well. Apparently, the books has a different ending. But as far as the movie goes, I thought it was a a good time, and I'm glad that I didn't see it when it came out because I was still teenage type of age. I probably wouldn't have appreciated it. But My Sister's Keeper was a good watch. Moving on to Aniara, which is a French film. Pretty depressing, and that's my bread and butter, as y'all probably know. But I'm not gonna give too much of the plot away. But Aniara's movie about people migrating from Earth, supposed to be going to Mars, but then something knocks them off course, and then that's just kind of their life now, is drifting through space, hoping to be able to find a planet that can ricochet them, slingshot them back to their destination. And you just kind of see the trials and the tribulations of everything that happens. There's a cool little gimmick about this machine that allows people to kind of like see their fantasies, memories. That way, a lot of people use it to see how their life was back on Earth. Um, and then there's stuff that turns into like cult stuff towards the end. Really depressing movie, but a great watch if you're into that sort of thing. Next up, Punch Drunk Love, Paul Thomas Anderson movie starring Adam Sandler. Um, Debatably Adam Sandler's best movie. Paul Thomas Anderson wrote it specifically for Adam Sandler, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember if he wrote the movie specifically for Adam Sandler or he wrote the character specifically for Adam Sandler. But it's a good movie, and highly do recommend it. It's not stereotypical comedy that Adam Sandler's known for, but that's kind of like whenever he's at his best. Not to say I don't like his comedies, but something like Punch Drunk Love, something like Uncut Gems, I think it shows that Adam Sandler does have a lot more range than people give him credit for. Next up, I finally started tackling the Jordan Peele films. No reason I hadn't watched them up until this point. I just hadn't gotten around to it, so I decided I needed to start doing that. So the first one I watched was Get Out, and this movie was so hyped. And I am happy to say that it is rightfully so. It is a great movie, a good suspenseful movie. Got some hypnosis involved, got some little unfaithful allegiances. I don't know what I was trying to say there, but it is a fun movie. It's got a little bit of comedy, but mostly it's a good suspenseful thriller, and I highly recommend it if you haven't checked it out yet. Moving on, I also got into a Michael Cera little kick for just a little bit. I went back and rewatched Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and I think it holds up. I don't remember there being anything that aged poorly, too problematic, like we see from some of the early 2000s, mid 2000s comedies. Sometimes it's kind of hard to go back and watch those. With Scott Pilgrim versus the World, I don't remember there being anything that was jarring for today's climate. And it was, still like a good, fun little movie. Of course, like Scott Pilgrim's character isn't a good guy, and the movie acknowledges that, which I think is the big thing. Is where if the movie isn't trying to portray the main character as like their actions as justifiable, I think that does allow it a little bit of grace with their actions. Moving on to SLC Punk. I love Matthew Lillard, and I hadn't actually seen this one. I've known of its existence for a while. I've just avoided it because I've heard kind of mixed things. But after watching it, I do enjoy it. I think it is a fun little watch. Just for Matthew Lillard alone, like I love him as an actor, and I think he did really well. And also just the kind of the arc of the punk scene, going from emo kid to corporate America is very relatable. I know a lot of punk kids, or at least like whenever it came out, a lot of punk people thought it was a bad representation of the punk culture. Um, but I mean, I still enjoyed it. So whatever that says about me. Peanut Butter Falcon, which I hadn't heard the title before, but there's one particular clip. Whenever I heard it, I'm like, oh, so that's where that's from. Um, when he says Shia LaBeouf's character says something like, "What's rule number one?" And then the dude he's traveling with says, "Party." And then no, not party. Well, it's from that movie or from this movie, Peanut Butter Falcon. Just a good, wholesome movie. Has a lot of random actors. So we got Shia LaBeouf. We have Dakota Johnson, who not a huge fan of, but it's fine. Yellow Wolf, which is he's just like somebody's like or one of the rednecks. Not even like their hired like gun. He was just like part of the little posse or whatever. Then we have Jake the Snake Roberts, um, and I think Mick Foley made an appearance. But yeah, it's just the casting was pretty stood out a lot to me. But it was a pretty good wholesome movie. Ending's kind of weird, not really logically or legally makes sense, but it's fine. Moving on to again, I picked up on my Michael Sarah Bender movie called Magic Magic. And so there's two movies here, Magic Magic and Crystal Fairy and the Magical Cactus, two Michael Cera Chilean films, which I thought like they're both good movies. Magic Magic, I liked probably for the wrong reason. I wasn't a big fan of the main character, and she dies in the end, so I was like, yeah. And then Crystal Fairy and the Magical Cactus. Michael Cera's character is a douchebag, but again, he's not portrayed as a good guy. Um, but it is a fun little movie. They're both just very like, for the most part, down to earth movies. Especially like Crystal Fairy. It's just kids trying to get high, you know. So what's more relatable than that? Next up, The Godfather Part Two. And again, I won't talk about it too much just because it's been beat to death. But it's a great movie. For me, with the Godfather movies, they're very long. It's just I like movies. I'm gonna compare it to Spirited Away. Maybe an odd comparison, but just something to where like I can just get lost in the world for a few hours, and not really worry about the time. I kind of treat it like I'm watching just like a mini series or something. Um, but yeah, it's just a really, for me, just a really fun movie. The Godfather Part Two, it does the thing where it bounces back and forth. Timeline wise, it goes to, um, God, I'm forgetting names, but so Daddy Godfather. It goes to whenever he was younger, and then it goes to Baby Godfather, Al Pacino's character, and it's just fun the way it does the little back and forth and everything. I feel like it makes it more digestible as far as the runtime. Next up, a movie I worried about actually watching as I was watching it because I'll just say this. So, Salo, 120 Days of Sodom. It don't watch it. I'm not gonna say it's a bad movie. It's very much a movie meant to shock you. The director was killed, I think, before it even came out, like officially released, because of the subject matter and things that happen in the movie. I knew it was a graphic movie and I knew it was an extreme movie. I was thinking it was because of just violence. It's not because of violence. It is just a very uncomfortable movie to watch. And I'll leave it at that. I can't recommend it. Moving up to Unknown from 2006. I specify the date because there's a few movies with this title. So this one, it's basically, I thought it was going to be like that Family Guy episode where they kind of wake up whenever Stewie puts them in this little simulator, and they wake up in the hospital and they're trying to figure out their identities. And it's kind of like that. These people wake up in a warehouse and none of them know who they are. They're trying to piece together like, did you knock me out? Did I knock you out? Are you the bad guy? Am I the bad guy? So the concept was fun. The execution wasn't great. Um, Still don't think it was a bad movie, but I had higher hopes. Like after I had read the synopsis, or not, just like the little brief on Tubi, not even necessarily a full synopsis, but um, still, like I'm not mad for watching it, but it wasn't as fun as I thought it'd be. Next up, I watched the three Hell House movies, and in retrospect, I should have saved this one for or these for October, but I mean it's fine, close enough. But they were fun, just some little found footage style movies. The first one, I think I like the second one the best. The first one is good. Didn't care for the third one because it gets a little over the top silly. Um, but they're fun. I've heard a lot of things about them. I would say I wish I discovered them without hearing so much about them because it's one of those things, kind of like with The Godfather. Not that they're anywhere on the same level, but it's just you hear good things about movies or whatever, and you just kind of, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, you put it on a pedestal of expectation, and then if it doesn't meet that, it's even if it's good, it could be disappointing. That was the case for the Hell House trilogy. Not bad by any means, but not as good as I was hoping. Moving on to Us, the second Jordan Peele movie that I watched. Um, and now that let me talk about Us, and then I'm gonna look for something else here. My least favorite of Jordan Peele's not because it's bad. It's kind of goofy. But not in like Nope is also goofy. But Us is just kind of like goofy from a, again, not that it's a bad movie. I don't know. It feels like a weird, like going from Get Out to Us, even though it's still like thriller and stuff. I don't know. It just, for me, it didn't really resonate the way that Get Out and Nope did. But again, not talking bad about the movie. I don't really know how to articulate why it doesn't sit as well, but yeah. Um, and I watched Nope. I thought I watched it in September, but now that I'm looking on my list here, I don't see it. That's what caused the confusion. I think I just didn't write it down. So it should be 33 movies in September. So slight correction from the beginning. So I'll just talk about Nope now. Nope, I enjoyed, particularly with Nope. Out of the three Jordan Peele movies, I feel like it offers a lot to talk about, mainly just with the little spoilers, but the little alien thing. I feel like there's a lot of discussion you can have about that, and if it was, if it's actually alien, if it's native to Earth, and we just haven't really interacted with it. And then there's stuff with the monkey and the shoe standing up, what's a bad miracle, all that. I think there's a lot to talk about, and just like fun conversation, not just social commentary type stuff, which are also can be, enjoyable conversations and important conversations. But Nope for me is the most fun Jordan Peele movie to talk about, and I feel like that's the biggest compliment that I can give it. So of course I recommend it. Moving on, Frances Ha, which was recommended by a friend, who had a friend recommended it to her, and it is Greta Gerwig's in an acting role instead of like a directing role. It is really good, very relatable. Also has Adam Driver in it for a little bit. Um, but yeah, it's kind of similar to Lady Bird as far as it being like kind of a coming of age, trying to find your place in the world type of movie. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed Greta Gerwig's character, Frances, the title character, and it was really fun. There's some serious moments. Definitely will have you tearing up. Um, but yeah, it was a good time, and I'm glad that I hadn't even heard of it, and it's part of a Criterion collection, so I'm not sure how it's never popped up on my radar. But moving on, Lake Mungo. Another one, not a bad movie, but I've just heard about it quite a bit, and so it had, to no fault of its own, it just let me down. But again, not that it's a bad movie. It does like a mockumentary style. It's made out to be like a legitimate documentary, and those can be kind of hit or miss for me. So not my favorite movie in the world. I do recommend it. I mean, it is a good movie. Good horror movie. I just feel like you have to be in the right headspace for it, and you have to temper your expectations. Now, this is maybe where I lose some people because I watched Daybreakers, and I love it. It's kind of the opposite. So like Daybreakers, I had no expectations. Like I've heard of it, but I haven't heard good things, so I was going into it not expecting something fun, and I got something fun. I actually loved it. I love Ethan Hawke. I love Willem Dafoe, and I love how Willem Dafoe is just kind of cheesing it up, hamming it up, whatever. And Ethan Hawke is just playing it dead straight. Like he is playing it so serious in this movie about vampires in the future. Um, but yeah, Daybreakers, I love it. Call it a guilty pleasure. I don't care. Moving on to Climax. Same friend who recommended Frances Ha recommended this one. Never even heard of it. I think technically a French movie, but there's various languages throughout, if I'm not mistaken. Not really a coherent plot by design. Same director that made uh, Enter the Void and Irreversible, I think, is what he's is the two or the other two that he's known for. Um, but yeah, not really a coherent plot. Just a bunch of dialogue for like the first half or so before it gets crazy. And then whenever it gets crazy, it gets crazy. There's a lot of dancing, there's drugs involved, and then just people freaking out and everybody just having a bad trip. And that's basically the movie. Um, but yeah, it's a movie that you more so experience versus like, it's not something you are gonna like intellectually like discuss. Like, you're not gonna have like big drawn out discussions about it, but it's still a movie worth experiencing, in my opinion. Next up, a movie off of the AFI Top 100 that I've been putting off because it is 4 hours long. Gone with the Wind. Um, and so I still have to finish the AFI Top 100 this year, and I have about 40 movies left. And the big intimidating thing for me, especially with the type of like, these off the cuff kind of like talking videos that I'm doing that really have no value to them. Um, I have nothing to really say about them, especially when it's just like little minute and a half me talking. Like, I get that you can get more just by reading the synopsis of the movie than me just regurgitating what I remember, especially at this point from 2 months ago after I've watched 60 movies since then. Um, but so that's been my big thing with AFI Top 100 is I know I can't do them justice. So they've been intimidating to actually get through. But Gone with the Wind, I did enjoy it. I made sure I set a time. All right, I set the time aside to be able to watch it in one sitting. I don't like breaking movies up if I can help it. I did enjoy it. Did not like the main character. I know I wasn't supposed to. Uh, a lot of the characters, and I'm bad at names again, especially since I'm watching so many movies. But it's not like she's the only character you're not supposed to like. The main guy who says, frankly, I don't give a damn. He's a douchebag too. But whenever he said that line, mic drop moment, it made the movie for me. I don't know what that says about me. Maybe it's problematic that I enjoyed that so much. And of course, the movie being made in the 40s has plenty of problematic things that don't necessarily age well, but it is what it is. But Gone with the Wind, not as, I didn't expect it to be bad, but it wasn't as hard to get through as I thought it was going to be. But I am kind of surprised that it's like, not that it's so mainstream, but like, I guess people back in the 40s, they they weren't on their phones, so they had plenty of time to just turn on a 4 hour movie and be like, whatever. But anyway, The French Connection, another AFI Top 100. This one was, it's got like you got the cops that are just, the biggest thing I remember is the cops just roughing up people and being, just unnecessarily rough with people in the bar. Not really a big part of the movie, but The French Connection, this is another one where you read the synopsis and it'll tell you more than I can. I do remember enjoying the movie, but it's one of them I don't think that a modern audience will go back and just, because again, I've never even heard of the movie before, going through the AFI Top 100. I'm not going to say it doesn't hold value, but just looking at the movie in a bubble without context of the time and everything, it was fine. Next up, I watched the Shrek movies. Well, I watched the first two. We were going to a Shrek rave, so I wanted to, refresh my memory as if I haven't seen the first two Shrek movies a million times. Shrek 2 is better than Shrek 1. Hot take, maybe, I don't know, but Shrek 2 is one of the best animated movies of all time. Shrek 1 still amazing, more quotable for me, but Shrek 2 is a better movie in my opinion. Particularly, I don't like the misunderstanding cliche that happens, which I mean, it happens in both of them, but the misunderstanding of the second one is because they're being manipulated, but the misunderstanding in the first one is because they just aren't communicating properly. But that's not a flaw of the movie. That's just one thing that hampers one over Shrek 2 for me. But yeah, the Shrek movies, particularly the first two, great movies. Um, Next up, East of Eden, the first James Dean movie that I've ever watched, surprisingly. And it was really fun. And James Dean, he died very young. Um, Looking at him from a modern day lens, and not to speak ill of the dead, I mean, great acting. Very cheesy though, from a modern perspective, but I still had fun. It was a good movie that I've never heard of. I was looking for another movie and found this one, and yeah, I mean, I'm glad I watched it. It was fun. Next up, the last movie that I watched, so technically movie number 33, since I forgot to put Nope on here, Sleepaway Camp. I started this one as start of my horror marathon that I'm doing in October. I started a day early, but Sleepaway Camp, so cheesy, but so fun. At least for me, I've seen some TikToks where some people are discovering it and don't like it. That's fine. I get it. It is again very cheesy, very camp, very Sleepaway Camp. Um, but real fun movie, and of course it's got the ending, maybe problematic to the trans community. I don't know. I can't really speak on that as whatever. But Sleepaway Camp for me is very fun, and I'm glad that I watched it. I heard that the sequels are not worth watching. I may get around to those, but as of right now, I only have 2 more months to finish out the year, and so I'm probably not going to get around to those at least this year. So anyway, those are the movies that I watched in September, and this video is way late. I did kind of run out of motivation to make these because, and I'll just go on a little rant, I guess, at the end here to push us over the 30-minute mark. Um, I get that like these videos that they don't really offer anything substantial. They're really meant for me more than anything else. If other people watch them, obviously, great. That generally, that hasn't been the case, but um, I think next year, if I continue making videos, I'm going to, I don't know if I'm going to do the movie a day thing again. I mean, I might, I don't know. But if I make videos, I want to do it more of, instead of just, obviously, I'm not going to do the thing where I'm just like talking about 30 movies, 35 movies in a single video just for like a minute each. For me, making these videos, it's been good. That way, at the end of the year, I can watch them and just kind of like walk down memory lane. Um, but as far as actually offering something of substance, and I may end up making a new channel for it, I don't know. But I want to talk about movies with more of context. I've always like, I've always, at least subconsciously, been of the opinion that movies should stand on their own. You shouldn't need any context, you know? But then I look at something like, you look at like a $300 million Disney movie and compare it to a $2 million independent movie. Of course, the Disney movie is going to look better. So, and without that context of one was made by an independent filmmaker following his dream, the other one was just puked out by this conglomerate, this multi-billion upon billion-dollar corporation. Of course, it's going to look better. Um, so I do believe movies should stand on their own, but I also think context helps, especially when I'm going back and watching older movies. Particularly when you'll see me talk about in a couple days when I put out my October movie, is I watched a movie called The Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which is a famous German movie from 1920. And if you just go back and look at it without knowing anything about it, you may not see the importance of it. But then you start digging into why it's so special and how it's like basically the first horror movie as far as the way we see them today, um, and how like the art, the set design, the narrative, the plot twist, like stuff like that. The fact that it did it, you know, over 100 years ago, and it built the foundation for a lot of things we know today, and it built the foundations for things that built foundations for things of today. Like, you know, it set the groundwork for things like the original Frankenstein movie. Um, for just for one example, and without that context you don't see how important of a movie it is, and you don't necessarily have to. I'm not saying it's your job as a film viewer to know context. I've just learned that me personally going through this journey of watching, you know, at least one movie a day, one thing that I enjoy isn't just watching movies. I also love discovering context of movies. I love finding out, again, especially older movies, you know, what was the director's headspace? What was the politics involved in the making of the movie? Take something like Wizard of Oz, great movie, but then you hear about all the horrific behind the scenes stuff with Judy Garland and all that. And as awful as that is, me as a film fan, just knowing about it, I feel like, I mean, it makes the movie harder to watch. Um, but I'm trying to sound not pretentious right now, and it's kind of hard. Um, but I just think context is important the more that I'm doing this, at least for me personally. Again, I'm not saying anyone that y'all are required to have context when watching a movie. You can watch a movie, think it sucks, and I may disagree, and but you don't have to know the context that I may know. You're allowed to have a different opinion and move on with your life. But for me personally, I think I want to start putting out videos that kind of talks about context more. And that's something that I'm figuring out the more I just kind of like dump out these little just whatever videos that I've been putting out. But anyway, now that I've kind of just word vomited towards the end here, as always, thank y'all for tuning in. If you have any requests, recommendations, suggestions, or questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I hope everyone has a fantastic day, and I will see y'all later. As a loud truck goes by.